Naomi, are we ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor, Mayor.
Okay, I will call the May 24th, 2022 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think it's my turn. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Naomi. Roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here,
Councilmember Bond.
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque.
Here.
Can council members Steckler and Vignell hear us okay?
Yes, you can hear fine.
Okay. We will begin, as always, with audience communication. There is no one present in the audience here other than staff. Is anyone online like to speak to the council? I see Barb's virtual hand up. Barb, name and address in 3 minutes, please.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also say thank you. I didn't do it last time for specific reasons. Thank you to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem for doing the State of the City video. I watched it again today, and I truly appreciate you doing this. As far as I know, it's the first one that's ever been done since I've been here. And I just think it's a great way to also communicate with people and to encourage the citizens to speak out, let you know what's good, what's not working, the whole gamut. I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you. On another note, I would also like to say thank you to Joe for him being such a fantastic IT person and for making the transition to the new email address so easy, because he handled it. And I really appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Would anyone else like to address the council? Seeing no virtual hands, we will move right along. Is there any objection if we move the new business items, the 2 appointments up before we jump into our presentations and old business?
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no objection, we will move to item E, the Planning Commission appointment. The Mayor Pro Tem is going to handle this.
thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
These
Yes.
are really brave.
Okay,
people.
perfect. We had a great interview with the,
Really brave people.
Hold on one sec.
Hey,
Will,
hey,
can you
Will.
mute? Will, can you mute your, there you go. Thank you.
thank you, Will. We had a great interview with the outstanding candidate this afternoon. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Zach Hale to serve a term on the Arts and Beautification Board expiring October 31st, wait a minute, did I just do the wrong one? I'm supposed to be doing Planning Commission.
Yes, you were
I
going
wrote-
to do the Planning Commission appointment.
Yep, sorry about that. I wrote down the wrong,
The other one, Stephanie, go ahead.
go ahead.
So are you going to do the A and B board, Stephanie, just so we can, if you're
Sure,
going to do
that's
that one,
fine.
let's just.
That's fine. Sorry, I wrote the wrong one. Yes, so I'd like to make a motion to appoint Zach Hale to serve a term on the Arts and Beautification Board expiring October 31st, 2024. That was the language that was written in there, so I believe that's the proper term.
Second.
Yes, that's correct. I second.
And just so the record's clear that this is item F on the agenda, not E. Well, we took them out of order. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Now we will move to item E. Councilmember Allison will do the Planning Commission appointment.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to appoint Alan Abrams to the Planning Commission with an expiration of April 30th, 2025.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion also passes 7-0. And with that, we will now move into our presentations. Item C, Leadership Team 2022 Priorities. Acting City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and everyone in our audience, thank you for being here. Today, we're going to, I'm going to present here our 2022 operational priorities. It's a project that we've been working on off and on for the past few months. Started off with input from all of our employees, not all of our employees, but all of our departments regarding the department heads and the managers to provide me with their top priorities for 2022. What I did was I combined those on the spreadsheet. We prioritized certain items and figured out the interdependencies between all of those, and came to a huge spreadsheet where we just basically put the key ones on this presentation tonight. And let's see here. So the agenda for today is first to cover, I want to bring back what we've accomplished in our recent retreat back in March 15th and the 22nd, where we identified what our top priorities are for both council and council's priorities for the city manager in 2022. It'll be the first two slides will be pretty brief, and then we'll get into our departmental priorities. It's about 13 slides that cover each department and kind of what we'll be working on for 2022, both completing projects as well as planning for the next budget cycle. Closing comments, then we'll have questions at the end. So I'm going to go over this pretty quick. The first slide, pretty familiar, top 5 priorities. This is not an exhaustive list. There are a few other things that are really important that we covered as well, including how we're going to address, how we're going to work and continue finishing off the fire annexation now that it passed. We'll be discussing the GMA requirements moving forward, talking about our 2023, the legislative session that's coming up and how we plan for that, as well as our 2024 comp plan. Just a few items. There's a few other things, but we can address those later if necessary. The Dobson Remillard Church Cook, pretty obvious ARPA as well. I'm not going to go into much detail about that. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail as we move forward. The strategic communications plan. One of the key priorities for our communications department is to figure out what our successes and kind of where we need improvement across the city internally and externally with our external partners. So it's a plan that we'll be working on going forward. One big priority for the city, as well as you see, a council priority is fully staffing all departments, and we'll go into more detail in the following slides. Aligning city goals to vision, something that's pretty common. Looking at all of our priorities and ensuring that we are actually identifying what our vision is in addition to our mission, and always coming back to that and reminding ourselves so that we can continually align what those priorities are with the vision and the mission. These are the council's top priorities for the city manager. The RCC create a 3 to 5 year plan. Currently, what we're doing is, as we talked about before, is we're in the building our core business, working on our core services, making sure that we're addressing the basic needs of our departments. And I'll go into more detail about what those components are. We have these short-term objectives through 2022, which will also take care of a lot of things that we'll be working on in the next budget cycle as well, but that'll lay the foundation for us moving forward into the 3 and the 5 year area. Staffing needs, that's part of our rebuilding as well. So I'm going into detail about that. We'll emphasize a little more in the following slides in the presentation. Economic development. Another goal of city manager is to determine those key components of their building process, focusing on staffing, focusing on all the other things that entail aligning those priorities with our vision. And then strengthening our key partner and shareholder relationships. We've already moved forward in connecting with a lot of different stakeholders in the industry, people who we need to work with to move our business forward. I haven't had a lot of time to do that at this point, given I'm focusing on our operations. So moving forward, we'll have we'll be able to be more attentive to actually developing these relationships as new city managers hired. So the first thing I want to bring up is the goals that I have as acting city manager moving forward. There are 4 here. The first one is rebuilding our core operations. Our mission is to provide a level of service that sets the standard of excellence in local government. Well, we're not even close. But I think what we are on the road to doing that. We have a strong leadership team that will move us forward. And I believe we can get to that point somewhere down the road, but we still need to focus on rebuilding our core operations. That means focusing on staffing, improving our communications. Working on our workflow across departments, building in SOPs across everything we do to ensure that we have a procedural process that supports everything we do, kind of succession planning as well, so that generations going forward have something to guide them on all these processes that we have internally. The pandemic brought us in a situation where we had no choice, but now we have to look back and kind of figure out how we improve these processes. And so that's one of our key priorities. The second is building and strengthening key partnerships and shareholder relationships. It's one of city council priorities for the city manager, and it's also one of mine. Building relations between local governments, representatives at the local, county, and state level, or NGOs or non-governmental agencies as well. Economic development and planning. Again, we have to identify those economic components. We have to figure out what we're going to build on the DRCC property. How are we going to support our businesses? How are we going to increase our recreational opportunities or emphasize the ones we currently have? We're on a road to doing that right now with a lot of things that we're working on, including pickleball, lining the courts. We're partnering with the YMCA to outsource a lot of our recreational basketball programs. So we're moving forward and doing a lot of things currently, but there's a lot more work to do. And then finally, funding and financial assessment. Rebuilding comes at a cost. Of course, it involves staffing, buying equipment, financing long-term projects. Interest rates are going up, supply chains are getting squeezed, prices keep rising. So we have to be really cognizant of things that are happening in the industry and how it's affecting how we operate internally. So before I get into these, there are a few key points I want to make about, before I get into these department priorities, there's a few key points. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of interdependencies between a lot of these projects and tasks that we're working on. So when you look at these operational priorities on the surface, keep in mind that there are a lot of members across our departments that actually support one project. So, for example, we're going to propose working on our Springbrook upgrade, which will increase modules across the system, allowing us to integrate all these types of services, including payroll, HR, and so forth. But that takes the backing of IT and HR as well. So there are a lot of interdependencies that we have to be aware of that is going to take time across the city. The second is that we're going to be tracking and continually prioritizing our priorities going forward. As council's priorities change, so will ours. Keeping in mind that we will stay focused on those absolutely necessary core tasks and projects that we need to keep moving, that we need to keep doing to keep moving forward. So let's talk about the clerk's office. First priority is structure and support, city manager and city clerk's office. We don't have a permanent city manager. Our deputy city manager position is vacant. We have a new deputy city clerk. So amongst those 4 positions, we're actually going to be discussing how we better structure this office in a way we can support the rest of the city. The primary responsibility of the clerk's office is to fulfill the statutory requirements of that position, as well as executive support to the city manager, and I'll include the deputy city manager as well. In addition to promoting transparency across the entire city. So I think it's really important that we, again, restructure that office in a way that we can integrate this administrative office across all departments. 2 key projects that the clerk's working on right now are PRA, records of management, retention, and contracting process. The public records officer for the city is the city clerk, responsible for creating a public disclosure team. So one of the key goals of us this year in the clerk's office is developing a records steering committee. There are a lot of records that we have right now that are currently being destroyed, but they're finally getting to that point. So we're going to develop a process and a team that will guide us through that whole management process. Another thing we're working on is contracting. Our deputy city clerk is currently improving our contracting process across all departments. We'll be determining how these agreements are filed, stored across our G Drive electronic system, as well as in the boxes in the paper form. So now we'll get to the police operational priorities. Civil Service Commission. One of our goals is to increase efficiency across the police hiring process. And that means bringing our chief examiner in-house. We've talked to the current chief examiner, and we are exploring the assignment of our HR manager into that position. 3 big projects that we're working across PD is 1, interview facilities. We have a statutory requirement to update audio and video and make sure those interview facilities are working to current standards. We're remodeling our evidence lockers, and one big project in the past has been the RAS repeater antenna system, where there's been just a lack of reception going in and out of the building here. So it's one project we're bringing back, and we're going to nail it this year. So Chief and Public Works has already started doing that. Finally, the standard operating procedures. This is a bullet that is across all departments. So it's important to understand that we're going to do our best effort of, again, in everything we do, we're going to document these things so that we have records on how we move forward. So we don't have to keep talking about this over and over again on kind of what we do every time we approach that point. So we'll be filing this in our G Drive electronically too, so it's accessible to all of our staff. Staffing is another bullet that's on all of our departmental priorities, whether it's filling budget positions in 2022 or proposed ones for the next budget cycle. One emphasis I'd like to make for PD is that we will be focusing on patrol and possibly traffic as well. We believe it's important that we restructure the department a little bit in a way that we can provide those services a little more efficiently. Right now, we're down 7 employees, 8 in another 2 weeks. So we have a contracting person on staff that's been working for us, doing an excellent job, and I'll let the chief elaborate more when he does his report later in the session. Next is engineering. So I split engineering across, with Director Todd's help, we split across 3 different areas: engineering, development and planning, and operations. And we'll start with engineering. 3 of the big projects working on this year. First is our grade C failures. In the recent presentation, we've had our city engineer, if you remember, discuss how we're going to extend the life of these pipes. I think I believe the fiberglass infused type of material that with UV light actually adheres to the inside of these pipes. But so we're working on these projects. These one project from 2021 and the issues as well. But we're going to knock this out this year. So for all those pipes. The second is the Silvercrest Park design construction. I think we had a presentation recent past about this as well. That should be completed in 2022. Catch basin cleaning. Department of Ecology. One of the projects that probably will last 2023, possibly 2024, is inspecting and cleaning out these catch basins where necessary. I believe there's over 3,000, Director Todd said in the past, across the city of Mill Creek. We're going to be hiring a contractor in 2022 and executing in this year too, and we'll start that process. EGov discussion. 52 acres across 3 different properties. I think it's between 44th and 39th here in the city of Mill Creek. I think this project is probably, if not around 14 years, it's been in discussion for the last 14 years, if I'm not mistaken. There's some background online if some of you council members aren't familiar with the project. It's a little bit dated, but it gives you a good idea kind of where we sit in terms of a discussion that we should be making this year on whether we suspend this or move forward with that spine road discussion between the proposed passageway between those properties. And we'll bring this up more in the future, and so we can get council to weigh at some point in time on kind of what direction we want to go in. 2 programs that Public Works is working on within the engineering division is one is reestablishing the surface water compliance program. And what we're referring to is the spill plan, annual facility inspections, business inspections, long range planning, training, erosion control, and so forth. So we'll be working on that program initially. And then also the reestablishing the pavement preservation program. When I think of this one, it reminds me of the CIP. Of the 27 projects that are on the CIP, 5 of them are pavement preservation. So this is the big one that we will be bringing back, developing a multi-year plan to address all those needs, whether it's sidewalks. We've been doing the minimal we can right now, but we'll be building that program out a little more so we can do a more quality job in these streets. And finally, CIP evaluation, prioritization, and development. Right now, there are 27 projects in our CIP that we need to review this year as the budget cycle starts. Some of them are projects that I have been presenting on today, but we need to reevaluate those. We don't just keep carrying those over and over and over every year to make sure that it's things that we actually are realistic and that we want to continue working on. So that is a priority. Now we'll get into development services and planning. RCC. What we have now, what I can give it now is we're going to be working on RFQ, which we've done in June. The RFQ will include, among other things, studies, surveys, and reporting, and whatever it takes to put that together to bring that consultant in so we can move forward in the planning process for the DRCC. 2 things that go hand in hand: the Mill Creek Sub-Area Planning and the 2024 Comprehensive Plan. Now we're all familiar with our legal obligation to comply with the GMA requirements. And we absolutely cannot afford to incur any type of potential sanctions the state could incur if we do not comply. So as we plan for this, there will be also communications marketing working on the second component of finding facts and communicating to our employees and the public ongoing throughout the project to ensure that there's clarity on kind of where we're going and what we're achieving, what we're planning to achieve. Code enforcement is one big requirement of our development services and planning section within Public Works. They're planning on improving the code enforcement approach, the planning and coordination, reestablishing the processes that are needed to better service our employees and improve those internal processes as well, which includes learning how to better utilize GovQA and also an ongoing code update. One of the things that Director Todd mentioned is that we're continually updating our codes. So it's just something that the task that is one of our priorities moving forward. And finally, we didn't want to leave out our planning department or planning section. One of their key jobs ongoing is to support private development and support those developers moving forward in any services that they need from a city perspective. The last section is operations within Public Works and Planning. These are 3 projects that we're currently working on that things that have occurred in the public. For example, our home, we'll start with the fire annexation. After the passing of the annexation, right now what we're working on is transferring Fire Station 76 and also be working on a contract for fire marshal services as well. With that transfer of Fire Station 76, we'll be working on a purchase and sale agreement, a real estate transaction, possibly, hopefully transferring title before 12/31 of this year. Included in that transfer will also be a site inspection and also equipment inspection to determine kind of what is going to stay in that station or what possibly Surfer is going to take with them when they leave. We did confirm that they will provide service to us as of 12/31 of 2022, sorry. Over the past year, at least since I've been here, we've been addressing the homeless encampment situation. I'm going to speak mainly here about the private property at Thomas Center. We recently had a resident, Rita Miller, come in and express her concerns about the encampment behind that center. As a city, we have an obligation to be take care to help our homeowners, even though this is on private property. So what we will be doing, and there are no campers there, keep in mind. At this point, when we looked at the property, there's no one out there. It's just a bunch of garbage and things sitting out behind the fence. But we will take a proactive approach, go out there and encourage our homeowners, probably to hold meetings. We'll probably have them call a meeting. We'll attend the meeting, kind of explain kind of what we can and can't do as a city. If it's a fire and emergency, it's something we can address, or if it relates to the property owners in Thomas Center, the business owners that we believe own the fence, and it's something we can enforce. So we will explain this to all the homeowners, and hopefully we can get to that point. But that's going to take getting those individuals together in the format so that we can hopefully all work together and move forward somehow. So that's what we're going to do as a city, is also take a similar approach in any other private encampments throughout the city as well. So we'll continue taking that approach. Camera systems at the parks. At the Mill Creek Sports Park, the bathrooms were terribly damaged a number of months ago. So again, due to supply chain issues, it's going to take probably, I'm not sure how much longer, but it's going to take a number of months longer to fix those things. We're still waiting for supplies, getting the doors fixed. And so They were pretty badly damaged. We started talking about putting camera systems in there. And so our public works department is taking the lead on addressing cameras across a number of parks as well, so that we can avoid vandalism. If you recall, even last year, there was a TikTok thing where a number of other restrooms across the other parks were also vandalized. So we're going to probably put cameras over a number of parks. I don't remember exactly which ones at this point, but we can talk about those later. Recently, we've been evaluating the space over at City Hall North. We did a lease study with a company called CompPro. We have the retail rates of all those spaces at City Hall North. Director Todd and I talked about stepping back a bit and actually talking about maybe a facilities master plan that addresses maybe a bigger rehabilitation of the north building. The roof needs to be repaired. HVAC system needs to be fixed. And so it's really a bigger discussion. So we'll take that on this year as well. A few things they're working on internally. One of the projects that Matthew's team did recently is they fixed a sinkhole. And I bring this up because self-performance on infrastructure maintenance is we're going to continue to self-evaluate how we perform internally. One of the big decisions that we make, we've been talking about ongoing, is whether we do things in-house or we outsource. This sinkhole that they fixed, if I'm not mistaken, was always outsourced in the past, fixing sinkholes. We did it with our own employees, with our own equipment, with the excavator that you approved. It was a huge cost. Well, would have costed probably $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 going external, but we did it in-house. We did it fast, took care of it. So I think it's a great move in the right direction. I think over time it's going to pay for itself, given the age of our city and kind of things that we need to do from a vegetation in the street standpoint. So that self-performance is something we'll continually do, or Director Todd, kind of evaluating kind of in-house or outsource and kind of how we're performing internally. Establishing a surface water O&M program. Right now, we have a maintenance worker that's inspecting our catch basins. They're starting to do that. I talked earlier about how we're going to hire a contractor to help us move forward with the project. But as we move forward, we're again start figuring out how we can utilize our internal resources to start taking care of those services that we need to take care of moving forward. And so Robert is our maintenance worker is starting to do that. And so we're starting to move in that direction, and it's actually working. In the public works yard. Again, ongoing discussion. Everybody's familiar kind of kind of where we are with that. The Silver Lake Water District has the property up there. I guess I could mention that they did come back to us and talk to us about part of the property that they want to sell, but that's another discussion that we have to work with internally and then bring up to council, kind of what kind of decisions we want to make regarding that property or search for another property. Given the accumulation of equipment, the safety issues of having it next to the building, there is a concern with management that we need to find a better space.
Martin, how recent was that discussion with the water district? Just out of curiosity.
Mike?
Okay, good. Thank you.
So again, starting standard operating procedures. I just leave that on there I leave that on every slide. It's something that we're going to be mindful as we work through these processes, even across public works and planning. Staffing. One point we need to make is that we have still a project engineer vacancy and a public works development services manager vacancy. So Tom Rogers' position is still vacant. We do have Clay White in the position helping us, but until we fill these positions, it's going to be really difficult to move forward with a lot of these projects and priorities. Now we're going to get into finance. So one of the biggest projects we have is working on our 2022 and 3 budget. For the first time for this leadership team, we're going to be working on this project in its entirety. So it's going to entail collaboration between all the departments. Mid-June, I believe, is when the budget instructions come out to both council and directors and how to move forward in the process. Being in September is when the city manager will approve kind of a preliminary budget. In between that time, there's going to be a lot of discussions on council priorities, costs associated with council priorities, CIP, equipment, services, and everything that we need to keep everything running. Along with that, we're going to have a budget book. In that budget book, it's pretty typical. City manager letter, guiding principles, our funding policies, city expectations, expenditure forecast possibly, but everything that this would be in the book so you can actually present and keep that for future reference. 2 things that happen on an annual basis or is the annual report that needs to be prepared. I believe Director Brock is working on that now. One item that happens every fall is the financial audit. That's another thing that coincides with the budget process this year. So it's going to be a full plate for our budget director moving forward. We are working towards bringing on the staff accountant, so that should relieve some capacity, but it's going to be a busy year. Spring book conversion. One of the ideas that came about this year that we're going to be planning for next year is integrating many of our modules, or actually bringing to the service many of the modules in Springbook, including payroll, HR, employee self-service, or any other modules that are. We're going to have a functionality where directors can input their budgets right into the systems. So we're trying to leveraging the system to better make it more efficient. It'll take care of reconciliations automatically, so it's not manual for the finance director, and so it'll speed things considerably. What's going to take the time is the planning and bringing on the resources to make this happen. So, but that's one of our big plans for 2022 is planning that. ARPA again. One of council's top priorities. A little more detail about that. In the next following weeks, we are planning to have a meeting with council members to review their requirements, identify their potential expenditures, and we'll circle back to the directors as well to determine kind of what their priorities in terms of ARPA funding are. So this is something that will happen. We'll have, we're shooting for a presentation on June 7th, tentatively, to discuss ARPA. And so you'll hear more about that shortly. And again, policies update and SOP development. In the finance department, because I'm familiar with finance in the county, there are a lot of things that we need policies to cover: ARAP, reconciliations, probably general ledger, reporting. So there's a multitude of things that we need to prepare SOPs for under finance as well. And staffing, we have one staff accountant vacancy right now that we're still trying to fill. Hopefully we'll get that done in the next month or so. And also we'll be working on addressing any proposed positions that we need to fill in finance for the next budget cycle. So human resources. We're glad to have our HR manager in. I gotta say first that just having their presence really is bringing all of our departments together. she goes out and she meets with various directors, employees, and it's been really a value add for the city so far. We've been discussing some key priorities, which is hiring and recruiting. We've already talked in the past about a salary study that we're currently working on. This week we'll be about halfway through, and then we'll eventually advise council kind of where we're at with that. We're actually looking at both represented and non-represented positions. And also we'll have cabinet Dow review, kind of what we're working on as well. So we'll be a pretty good study. Here he did some research on the police position. So he has the methodology down across all the cities and the region. So we feel pretty good about the results of that study when we get the results of that study. One thing I did want to mention, I think the reason why we're working on salary study, because it not only addresses retention, but I believe it's actually one of the top 2, if not 3, key reasons why people leave, in my opinion. But it is important. Employee training. There's a multitude of training that we need to continue to address, whether it's employee-related, workplace-related onboarding, first aid, maybe healthcare, FMLA. So these are things that the HR manager is going to be currently working on too, is ensuring that we get the anti-harassment things that are really critical to our workplace that will eventually reduce liability in many ways. Performance evaluation process. We recently completed a evaluation review with Assure Consulting, the consulting firm that we currently work with. They evaluated the processes across both police and our civilians. We have documented the new process. We're going to have our HR manager review those, but we're going to go with those for now. We also have new forms for evaluations that managers and employees can use to evaluate performance. So we've made a few steps in that direction. Safety committee. State requirement, LNI, is to have a safety committee. It's something that we'll be working on this year. Establishing a committee. Strengthening the culture, safety of the culture, strengthening your safety of the culture and helping prevent costly workplace injuries. So it's a requirement that we need. Standard operating procedures, again, we'll be focusing on SOPs across human resources. So information technology, chamber room retrofit. This project should be done sometime in June. Supply chain issues, there was a problem with getting certain components of the retrofit. I think those are in, and I think we have a date set, and if I'm not mistaken, it'll be done in June, if not early July. And if that moves, we'll keep you posted. Citywide rollout of Mill Creek WA.gov. You've probably seen the email. We're changing everything in .gov. I believe this week we're working on, I don't remember. Anyway, we're going to roll out all the .govs across the city. Now, the old ones will continue working, but as far as it goes, moving forward, we'll start using the .gov probably within a month or so. So at some point in time, we'll have to get business cards changed and all the documentation, but we'll worry about that later. GovQA training. GovQA crosses a lot of departments, whether it's PRA or Public Works for code enforcement. Residents can go on GovQA, submit a request. It's been difficulty in kind of understanding how the system works, how code enforcement works. And so one of the priorities that we have this year is information that Joe, our manager, is actually setting up training sessions so we can actually thoroughly understand the system before we actually make any decisions moving forward. We did talk about, and I will be kind of talking about actually a external resident communications platform as well that's kind of tied to this, but we cannot do anything unless we actually understand the software that we currently have. So that's one step back that we had to take before we move forward with anything else. Phone system replacement evaluation. The current phone system is no longer sold nor supported by the manufacturer. So it doesn't have actually remote capabilities like a lot of systems have now. And so we're going to be kind of exploring basically a replacement of the entire system, but there needs to be more discussion on that. We're having current problems trying to support a lot of the functionality in the system. So it's a big project that we're going to be discussing before we move forward. Nothing's confirmed yet, but it's just more analysis in the beginning. And then a PC and laptop capital replacement. A lot of our equipment can be hitting its end of its useful life. So it's about the time to replace those in 2023. The IT manager will be performing a cost benefit analysis, kind of comparing the lease versus buy options. In the past, my experience have been that buying has always been the best, but nowadays I think it's worth exploring again. Given that the industries are changing, costs are changing, we don't know, even on the lease side, if that may be possible, or if it's more, there are more cons and pros kind of going that direction, but it's still something we need to explore. So that'll be on the table for this year to explore those options. It's a huge cost to the city if we purchase. So there are benefits to leasing as well. But we'll explore that and then update council on kind of where we go with that. And then again, standard operating procedures, and then staffing. There are no budget positions in IT, but we will explore any capacity needs moving forward. IT is a big component of the city, crosses all departments. And we want to make sure we have a backup plan as well, or somebody who can back up our HR manager. We currently have a consulting firm. I'm not confident that should something occur that firm could support us. So I think it's really important to kind of explore how we minimize that risk as well. Now we're moving on to marketing and communications. One of the big accomplishments this year is actually our marketing and communications department, actually bringing together all those events that were left from the pandemic, things that we did not do. It's just a collaboration it took between PD, Public Works, and marketing, and everyone, finance, to pay the bills. We came together and actually put together a pretty extensive list of those events and bringing those back. Working from nothing, well, probably some information that we found on these projects, but just pulling all these things together, I think was a huge success. So this is a huge, really important task moving forward. As this year, they'll start to evaluate kind of how things worked, and then moving forward, kind of figure out in the next following year how to improve on these things. So how to leverage our partnerships, the people we work with externally and internally. Next year is our 40th anniversary. So one of the big things is actually branding the city with the 40th anniversary logo or something to kind of recognize that in everything we do. Ongoing department-wide support. Marketing and communications continually work with all departments. Something comes up, whether there's an issue, they're always there to support us, whether it's creating place videos or educating the public on the stormwater system. So this is one ongoing task that they will continue working on and continue supporting our departments. It's just important that just everyone understands that. There are projects that are city-owned initiatives where there needs to be education and outreach. So this is also important to bring up. We have the fire annexation, something that is a huge project, a sub-area plan. DRCC, a few of the things that they will continue working on an ongoing basis. So one of the council's top priorities is communications. One of Marking's priorities and my priorities is we're going to be putting together a retreat to put together a plan, kind of our best practices, what has been successful so far that brought us to this point that allowed us to actually accomplish all the things we've done so far. As well as identifying those gaps and the weaknesses that the places where actually we need improvement. So moving forward, we'll have a plan together that will help us more efficiently move forward into the following years. One of Mark's goals is also to establish community involvement. Again, connecting with shareholders, chamber, economic alliance, also just working with our different partners and representatives that would actually help. We can help, that can work with us, and that we can leverage moving forward to help us provide those marketing and communication services. Two big projects that we are considering is, I mentioned earlier, is our resident communication platform. We were looking into a company called CityRouter Text Mica. It's an external application where you can use your mobile phone to communicate with the city on potholes or any issues or concerns you have, kind of like we have on our website, but more in a very simple form where it's just more mobile and they could easily just connect. But we haven't got to that point. We kind of put it on hold for a bit because we need to kind of sit down and step back a bit and kind of determine kind of where we want to go with this. So whether we just talk about it this year for the following year, I don't think we're going to be able to implement something this year, but at least we're going to start the discussions because I believe we need to make a better connection with our public or an easier way for them to communicate. Which brings me to website redesign. Just in a conceptual stage, occasionally we have broken links. We have problems with our hosting company. So there needs to be a better work linkage system on how our residents and the communities search for our website. So we're going to explore kind of not just the functional side, but also how nowadays people are used to navigating. So I think that's one big project that we're going to be discussing this year. And again, standard operating procedures and staffing. So one of the big things is actually in marketing communications, given all the things that they're working on, is we're talking about possibly bringing another body to actually help them move forward, because we believe with all the projects that we're working on, it's going to take a lot. The recreational programs we're working on the DRCC and that type of communications, the sub-area plan, supporting all the departments. What they've done so far with videos and postings on social media has been tremendously valuable to us. And I can go on and on about all the things that have been done from a marketing standpoint that I think has moved us a lot further, faster. So some of the key takeaways from today, I think what's really important is that I brought up vision and mission a few times throughout the presentation. I think it's important that we as a city, as a council and community always think about and come back to what our vision is. Our vision is to come together, right? Create that exceptional community experience where we're safe, where businesses thrive, where neighborhoods flourish and so forth. So I think we need to always think about that, bring our employees back to that. Our mission statement says we want to develop a level of service that sets a standard of excellence in our government. Again, I mentioned that we're far from that, but I think we're on the road to move in that direction. But the vision and mission is something we need to continually come back to, or otherwise revise it in a way that we feel that adds value to what we do as a municipality. again, want to emphasize that right now we're laying the foundation, the operational foundation for us to move forward. The staffing, the communication, the equipment, the processes, the SOPs, all these things coming together is what's going to keep us strong moving forward. Align the city's priorities with councils. We will continually do this on an ongoing basis. We continually evaluate what we do internally. One of the reasons why we got to this point is because we've worked together, teamwork and collaboration. Been super successful so far, but you know, to be honest with you, I don't know how we did it so far, but we just pick up and we get stuff done. We're so good at solving problems and hitting just the hot items all the time. But we need to take a step back and start planning better. And that's what we're doing now, which is actually creating more capacity for us going forward. So we have the talent and capability, and I'm confident that moving forward, things will improve. And the final one, I've always been one to believe that customer focus really is the key to success in any business. Now, in local government, I think of it as community focus. So everything we do as an operation, we build around what our community needs are. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. I think it's good for me and the rest of the council and the community to see that all that you and staff have going on. So thank you for the presentation. Could you unshare the screen so I could see others on the screen? And start with Councilmember Cavalieri.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Martin. Good job. Couple of things really quick. Let me just get this part out there. If the opportunity exists for us to turn the valve down on the overflow of parking and collecting of vehicles and equipment here in City Hall, I'd love for us to pounce on the opportunity with the Silver Lake Water District. I know I've been tooting this horn for a while. I think the ARPA funds that currently exist would be a great resource, one-time lump sum cash to really solve a lot of problems. That's just a comment. And the next is a question. You mentioned that we have the potential to fall behind or not get current projects done in the CIP. So is it possible for us to potentially, until we can get people hired on, bring contractors on board or other consulting work to kind of fill the gaps where we're lacking?
Yeah, I think that's an opportunity. I think we've shown that just most recently we brought in a lateral hiring or a consultant to help us in PD for the hiring. Clay White's here on the public works side. One of the things going forward that I've talked to the staff about, a few of them, is actually using consultants to help us move things forward. For example, maybe not a good example, website design. We can't do that in-house. So maybe it's possible that we can use those funds internally to run some projects from external, outsource actually the work to help us move forward. On the CIP side, Director Talk could probably speak more to that, but yeah, I think that's an option. I think it's we did talk briefly about outsourcing, just generally speaking. And so, do you have any thoughts about that, Mike?
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. It is really hard to manage consultants and get good results out of your project. So there's just a limit to how many plates you can keep spinning at once. And so we're up against that pretty much. So Frank has got 3 projects running and is trying to get other things going for us. So I think you hit the nail on the head. We're really stuck until we find some more resources. We can try to, we will spend more money and go hire consultants as much as we can, but the danger is if you just hire people and don't direct them well, then you end up with more trouble than you wanted. So that's, you've heard us talk about it. I don't want to be whining, but that's the reality. It's a harsh reality. Having a really tough time.
So one of the key priorities we have for Public Works Department is actually exploring positions as well. So that are not budgeted. But we don't know that yet until we determine kind of what our capacity needs are this year. In this budget season that coming up in June, it's a critical time that we will use to evaluate that. So we've been talking about internally about a lot of capacity needs, but this is all concept, and we just really need to dive into the weeds. Yeah.
I see you, John, but we've got two more first. So Councilmember Allison.
So a couple of operational questions because people around town have been asking me. So the first one, the snowplows did a lot to the dots that mark our lanes, and there's a lot missing from the neighborhoods too. Is there a plan, you know, like is the Public Works Department going to replace those in July and August, or what's that plan? It would be good to mention that here, I think. Second one is that encampment situation or future encampment situations. I understand it's private property, but can that property owner, can code enforcement, you know, force a cleanup of that property? I really feel for those people that live on the other side of that. Even if the people camping are gone, if all the garbage is still there, you know, that can't be a happy feeling. Can code enforcement, you know, ticket the person that owns that property, you know, somehow force the cleanup of that property at least?
So we could talk about the
Find the victim.
the pavement markers. That's probably part of the pavement preservation program.
Well,
I'll
let
let-
Matthew speak to that. He's got a plan for part of that. Go ahead, Matthew, on the RPMs.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, the RPMs, the raised pavement markers, we actively have a plan and are expected to start putting those down as early as next week, maybe the following week. That is very weather dependent, and we have not really had a string of dry weather since the end of the year. So
Yeah, so it could be July and August, but okay, gotcha.
doubtful,
Thank you for saying that in public here, because that will help people. I can direct them to tonight's meeting. Okay, so then my second question.
So the homeless, the tough thing is when you live in a homeowners association where you have common property that all of the owners have an association, it's not a fun thing, but you have a way to come together and deal with that.
Okay, so this is that. Okay, so the property for this particular case is actually part of the homeowners association.
No, that's the problem.
That's
Here,
the
30
problem.
people each have 1/37th common interest in 1/37th of that parcel,
Oh,
several
okay,
parcels.
okay.
And so it's really hard to trespass them. And it's hard. We can write letters to those 37 people and say, we're going to fine them for cleaning it up, but it doesn't work. So that's the issue. That's what we're talking about, potentially having a meeting and seeing if people will come together and help themselves, because we really can't, we don't have the tools that we're missing HOAs in those areas.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, I feel the plight from them. And yeah, I think your staffing problems, right? It's the same in the public sector as it is in the private sector. So those studies that you're doing about the salaries that are associated to those positions, hopefully that will come back, and you know, there'll be some adjustments and you'll be able to actually make offers that people accept.
Yeah, that's I think part of it is, we don't think we're even getting people in the door when they look at our salary range we offer and they go, I'm already making that, or I'm close to the top. I think I'll look at, look, another city is offering 10% more. So that's one of the things that our HR director is going to help us with.
Right.
I think that's one of the obstacles. The other one is, and Frank will point this out, just getting somebody hired then takes a certain amount of time to get them up on board. We talked about that when you brought the intern idea.
Right.
We are looking to we may even have to go take new college hires and train them. You still have that same problem you have with the intern, at least after you spend 3 months training them, maybe you get some more use out of them. So Frank and I are very creatively looking at maybe some associate engineers instead of just project engineers and training them, and then coming back and look for some seniors that can help supervise those too. Because there's only so many things that Frank is a team of one right now.
Right. Yeah, completely feel that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, the bigger challenge too is just from an overall standpoint is the number of retirements that are taking place cross government. And then there's a competition of fighting for those younger workers that are going to those other agencies that are actually paying quite a bit more as they go into their careers. Government doesn't look so exciting. One thing that our HR director raised that we discussed is actually looking at our benefits. We believe that we can tweak those in a way, kind of explore our package to see if we can be a little more competitive than our neighboring municipalities across the region. So it's not just salary, but it's benefits as well. I think is important to consider.
Yeah, that total compensation package.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
great. Thank you.
Councilmember Bond, followed by Councilmember Steckler.
Thank you. Salary study comparables, that's awesome. I hope we focus on Snohomish County cities. Bonnie Lake is a great match for us, but we're not losing people to Bonnie Lake. We're losing them to Bothell, Linwood, Edmonds, Mukilteo, and Everett. And so we need to at least be aware of what we're competing with, even if they're maybe not ideal matches in what used to be deemed compatible cities. With regards to the community development department and our manager position, I'd be willing to hear guys on at a later date on where that's at. Should that position remain a manager's position? Should it be a director of community development position? Is there something we can do there? I haven't talked to anybody yet, but I suspect you're having a very tough time filling this position because I know there's a significant shortage of people with that skill set. I've been beating this drum and it got beat again. I've been doing it for about a year now. It focused on police and then it expanded into the rest of the city hall, this hiring crisis. Microsoft nearly doubled its budget for employee salary. I imagine Microsoft's got a pretty big budget, and to nearly double it is probably a pretty significant decision on their part. And they did it because they were losing everybody. Their best and brightest were being lured away from Microsoft jobs. We're competing with that too. We got a challenge here, folks. I don't know what the solution is, but I would be really willing to explore some creative options. Something that maybe says, if you've been here for 2 years and you've had some good evaluations, you get an immediate step raise effective this point if you're not at the top step. And that will not affect when you qualify for the next step. The ARPA monies is a chance for us to reward the staff. The federal government's given it to us, said this is an acceptable use, and we need to step up and do it and try and show these folks. I'm not so much worried about recruitment anymore. I'm worried about retention. And when they leave, when these folks leave, when someone who loves working for the city and they're, I will give you $5 more. No, I love it here. It's too good. $10 more. And I love it here. It's too good. $1,000 more. I mean, at some point they're going to leave. The offer's going to be too good. And they're going to be taking the best and the brightest. So then we're going to have to hope that we recruit somebody who is also best and brightest. Well, maybe they're not. Maybe they're in the meaty part of the curve. And eventually over time, we don't have a balanced workforce. We've got a distorted one. So we need to stay competitive and to the best we can. I know this is going to be tough. We are not in a position like Microsoft to double our budget, but this is a real thing. And we're at the beginning of it. Retirements are a part of it, but there's a whole lot going on. For the most part in the state of Washington, if you're employable, you're employed. So now we're just trying to figure out who can steal who. I guarantee you, Matthew Combs has probably been approached by somebody or somebody working for him is like, hey, what are you guys doing? Are you happy over there? Because we're looking, we're hiring. My city's trying to get you. They're trying to steal our cops. We're trying to stay competitive with that. We're aware of that. What about Naomi, Jody Gunderson? Tom Rogers left. We can't replace him easily. And we can't replace any of these people easily. So I just want us to really be aware this is just the beginning. We need to think about a plan for retention. And maybe if we're lucky, we can recruit.
Councilmember Steckler, followed by Councilmember Duque.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, interim city manager, I wanted to compliment you on this report. I don't recall seeing something like this in a mid-year report, talking about exactly what the each department is working on during the year. This is excellent. It's a great update for every one of us to bring the council up to speed, to bring the city up to speed, all the citizens. Thank you for doing this. I have one question for you and actually one question for the mayor. And my questions are very simplistic because I think you really covered everything really, really well. I was just curious. I have not received one of the emails yet about the email change. So maybe this is covered in that. I was curious what promoted the email change. That was my one question. I was just curious. Maybe there was a reason for it. And why don't you go and answer that one? I'll ask my question of the mayor.
Well, yeah, I'm going to let the chief answer that question. A lot of it related to PD's requirement when they're applying for training in classes and programs that they do require a .gov. That created overall discussion regarding what we should do from a citywide perspective. That kind of filtered on into the federal, kind of aligning ourselves with kind of the federal requirement or common movement towards making everything .gov as a municipality. So I'll let the chief kind of go into a little more detail about why, from a policing standpoint, that's important.
Thank you, City Manager. That's exactly right. I think you explained it very well. With some of the vendors that we work with some of the training classes that we're working with, some of our other interactions with law enforcement communities, we're restricted somewhat on if we were to use the .com email addresses, we were actually being denied access based on the fact that we're not a government. It's not a government email. So if we weren't using a .wa.gov or US City, whatever those email addresses might be, we were getting denied access into some of our law enforcement vendor training, some of our intelligence groups. So that's the reason for the movement to the .gov address.
Great answer. Thank you. Mayor, one suggestion I had, just I noticed that our city planners are working on the 2024 comp plan, the code enforcement plan, the issues that we're all looking at about providing the additional housing needs in the future, and the fact that our city is pretty much out of space. And I know we looked at the consultants' recommendations from the sub-area plan, which created a lot of discussion and news reporting, which created a lot of emotion in the marketplace. Would it be possible, one of the things we have not opened up the discussion of, could we have at a future council meeting, since they're going through this discussion this year, could we open up the discussion, an intelligent discussion with good data about annexation opportunities that could be available to us? Is that an option that could solve this problem? We've not discussed it in length, and I think it would be something that we owe to the citizens just to have the discussion. I'm not a proponent for or against, but I think we should possibly have that discussion. And that's a question I actually propose to you because you're much more of an expert than I am on it.
Yeah, I believe in the coming months, Director Todd and Clay are going to be coming to us kind of with a roadmap 2024 update. And so I think that can be part of that discussion.
Great. So that'll be part of the city's involvement as well. They're keeping that in mind as well in their solution. So that answers my question. I'm done.
Okay. Councilmember Duque, followed by Councilmember Cavalieri, but only if the Mayor Pro Tem didn't raise her hand.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to echo all the sentiments from Councilmember Steckler. So I'll move on from there. I think it was fantastic content. And I know that later in our agenda, we have the newsletter that our communications team has put together that has such great info about what the city is doing. And then here's another example of it. And being able to have the content, in a newsletter and then in a city council meeting. And I know we have such great communication staff to figure out how can we chunk out this information to have it, distributed to all the different ways. And I think one of it is actually to us. And so I know that we get these presentations or these updates in city council meetings, but I've had the same thing. I have a list of kind of emails and questions that come up. And, it'd be good to know the status of projects. And I guess my project manager brain likes to think of, a big whiteboard that shows a project and it moves over, because that's what I used to do when I worked in Seattle. So visuals like that. I mean, I don't know if there's something like that as a city council that we could be viewing, that we could have access to, of something virtual like that, like Cannon board, or, something like that, I think would be helpful to keep us up to date. But again, I don't know how public that can be. So that was my hope about continuing to share these. Just the way that you're formatting the information is fantastic. And I thank you for that. I raised my hand specifically because I wanted to follow up on that encampment issue, because this happens to be in my neighborhood. It happens to be with neighbors that I walk by and they talk to, and that's the tricky part about, they're not an HOA. There's all those kind of fine line, who owns the fence, what you can do. But really what they've said, the three neighbors that I've spoken to, and one who came here that we've talked about repeatedly, and and we're trying to work through, is what would be really helpful if at the end of the day, once all this is fixed, is or move forward in the progress in your conversations, is that there was some type of, and I like to call it a decision tree, about what happens if something like this happens in your neighborhood, right? So if you find we used to have like a frequently asked, or we do have a frequently asked question on the website, and it would always pertain to the RV or camper that's in the library. I can't remember the official name of that page, but something like that. What happens if you find someone is making camp on your property, or in a green belt that you're not sure if it's city or if it's your HOA, and who needs to manage it, and saying, this is who you need to contact? Because I know from these neighbors, one of the main things, besides getting the fence fixed, which is that's a whole nother can of worms about who fixes it and how they've done it in the past. But specifically, if they could go in and clean it, they would, but they don't feel comfortable going in there and removing things that may have medical. There's so many things that could be there. And they normally are the neighbors who take a trash bag with them and like clean up as we walk along our sidewalks. They don't feel comfortable doing that. And so what is that resource then? Who do they call? What company, like what can they do to get it cleaned if it is private property? I think some of that decision tree or modeling of what needs to happen as next steps, I hope is the final kind of outcome of all of these conversations. Once we've worked through it, is that we can provide that, so we can look towards it, and knowing that it'll be updated, knowing that, things will change, but having that information available, I think is really key, and something we can point our neighbors towards when they come to us asking those questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's fair to say I'm a person of action. I prefer not hiding out in minutia. I prefer the understanding of, I think all of us do up here, that when problems arise, there are solutions and uncomfortable conversations to have, and here we are. So finally, these encampments or the homeless or the indigent, whatever we want to call them, are starting to encroach in some of our backyards, and you can see what happens and what becomes of it. This is our opportunity as a council to give direction to the city manager and the city attorney to be creative. There are ordinances out there. There are cities' rights that we can address this in, whether it be through the law, whether it be through consolidation of laws, whether they be county or city, the creation. It's our opportunity to do that. So that would be my first response here in hearing all this, because it seems that we have consensus here to do something about it. That's the first thing. Second, we have been, I don't want to say malingering, but I would say discussing the lack of engineers, the lack of planning personnel for quite some time now, and the troubles that we have hiring them. And Councilmember Bond kind of put a bow on it when he said it's only the beginning. It's going to get worse. The engineers are not going to have a union boss show up here and tell us that, the situation is dire and people are going to die tomorrow if we don't get more of them. So here we are just talking about it again. So I'm prepared to make a motion to the city manager to give him the ability for these positions to use ARPA funds to authorize up to $20,000 signing bonuses and retention bonuses for these employees as of today, as far as your hiring packet. That would be my motion.
Second, so we can have a discussion.
Any discussion? Councilmember Steckler?
You know, I have no problem with signing bonuses. I would rather not use ARPA funds for them. These are salaries. Let's find a way to justify. We have the funding in our salaries, the salaries that we've saved. I don't think we need to open up the ARPA funds for this, but if we need the signing bonuses, let's authorize the funding from the salaries that we've saved by not funding these positions. So I think it'd be I would ask for I would not support using ARPA funds, but I would support signing bonuses for these positions if need be to get them done, but to use them from the general fund, the monies that we've saved from the salaries that we have not hired and the monies that we have saved. We have the funds available, so I would prefer that we use those. I personally do not like using the one-time funds of ARPA for any type of salaried positions, but I do support the signing bonuses if need be to get these positions hired.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I think for me, I would like to have a discussion with the city attorney on this and get his input, because I feel like there's a possibility that we need to have a further discussion on this rather than just decide tonight. So I would like to hear from him to see if there's anything we need to be considering that we're not thinking of or that needs to be delved into a little bit more deeply before we make this decision. Thanks.
So is that my cue, Mayor?
Sure.
Okay. Going to be called on. So typically you're under your governance manual, you would have it, this is an agenda item, and it would be placed on it so that there would be an opportunity for public comment on it as well. Certainly could get that done. I'm sure the acting city manager could get that on the agenda very, very shortly. Also, I think it would be helpful from a staff perspective if we could specify which positions particularly we're talking about. I know Councilmember Cavallari mentioned the engineer position. There may have been others that you have in mind, but it wasn't entirely clear in the motion itself. So given that it's an important motion and it's an important subject matter, it would be good to get it right. If there's some direction about which positions you have in mind, we could certainly work on that and bring it back to you at a upcoming meeting very shortly.
Yeah, I support the sentiment, but I don't support the motion. We need to move quickly, but we need to move very measured and on an informed basis. I believe in the coming weeks, we're going to get a presentation from our finance director on ARPA and how we might use it. We haven't even heard the results of the study or the survey that the human resources director has just completed. And I also think that using the ARPA funds for this might be like a sugar high, that it's not going to solve the long-term problem. We have a bigger issue. We do need to do something in the short term, but we have a bigger structural issue, is what you pointed to, Councilmember Bond, that we're going to have to deal with as part of the budget. It's not just a one-time bonus situation. We've got a structural problem now with the way wages have been inflated. And unfortunately, we don't have the cash reserves that Microsoft has. I wish we did. We have a healthy reserve for a city, but not on a Microsoft level. So I agree with the sentiment, but I'd ask, give us a couple weeks. There's some more information the city manager is going to be bringing to us and with the finance director that'll, I think, allow us to have a little more informed decision-making process on that. So that's where my head is at. Councilmember Cavalieri, do you have more comments?
Thank you, Mayor. And I am more than happy to table this to next week or the week after. The idea was to get the dialogue going. And if we can give staff direction to, there are a few positions that where, again, lagging isn't even a strong enough word, where we're behind. And what I fear the most is there are a couple of good, well, I'm sure everybody's good, but there are some really key personnel that are probably feeling overwhelmed at this point. And I think I heard Frank say that a couple of weeks ago. So second part of that is that this is what the ARPA funds were for. This is what the federal government directed them to use for, is to plug holes. And I know finance is on the Zoom call here, to fill these gaps, to retain employees, to use them as bonuses. That's what one-time funds are for. I mean, I'm sure we all have these great projects that we'd like to fund, but again, none of these projects gets done without the personnel to fulfill them. So again, ARPA funds are the appropriate funding source for this here, in my opinion. And whether it's a sugar high or not, it's still going to get us to that next step, which is where we have to get. So I'm happy to table this for now, and as long as we have a plan going forward. Thank you.
Acting City Manager, then Councilmember Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to bring up, since we're in that discussion also regarding hiring bonuses and retention, hazard pay. During the pandemic, there have been a lot of employees that have pulled us through that. I think that's important to recognize as well. So we should bring that into the discussion. I do appreciate that we are taking a little bit slower. I think it's important that we do obtain the right information going forward. Staffing has been an issue, filling positions, and we do have salary savings in certain areas as well. So a number of things we have to consider, I think, what our options are. But that means bringing all the information to the table and then making that final decision. So thank you.
Councilmember Bond.
So I'll just say this because it's interesting. I think I was a first responder throughout the beginning of the pandemic, and I didn't get COVID until I took the office job. I was there for 10 days and got sick. I should have stayed in a patrol car. I'd be curious as to what one, I don't care what pocket it comes out of. If we can make Councilmember Steckler happy or Councilmember Cavalieri or everybody, I sort of like the idea of one-time revenue sources like ARPA going to one-time expenses, like retention bonus, not ongoing salary, but however we want to do it, I'd be open to. And I'd like to know what the allowed maximum amount per employee is. Do they, if there's any type of cap on that, and what it is?
So with the new guidance, they have not specifically said. I know that there was in previous guidance when they were talking about hazard pay, there was a cap. I believe it was 25% of someone's salary. And at this point in time, though, with the new guidance, they did not give a cap.
So I would be in favor of the $20,000 that Councilmember Cavalieri spoke of, with some sort of, with legal taking a look at it, city manager of like, okay, what does this mean? Can the employee take 10 in 1 year and 10 in the next year? Can they take $5,000 over a window of time to assist them with their tax purposes and decision-making there? And then what is the commitment from the employee in accepting that? The retention bonus, focusing not on recruitment. I'm really focused on what could we do to reward the folks that are here now and try and keep them from leaving us.
Martin, are we still on track to have the presentation on ARPA on the 8th at our next meeting? Or this, where we meet in 2 weeks, whatever 2 weeks from tonight is.
I'll have to reach back to the
Okay.
finance director and I will update you.
We're trying to get the ARPA discussion on the agenda for either the first or second meeting in June. So it depends on when Laurel is gonna be able to have that together.
I do still need to meet with everyone. I apologize. I've been trying to get all of our stuff done for our annual report. I'm getting closer. I'm almost done. We just hit some snags. So I may try to hit all of you tonight to find out what your availability is next week.
You heard how important this is to everyone, so I'm sure they'll cooperate fully in making themselves available. So, okay, are there any other questions, comments tonight? So I think
Mara, we can't hear you. If you can just pause for a moment, the sound went out. Joe will be coming in now.
Yeah, it sounded like something that, at least on this end, it sounds like something went.
Good. I thought it was me.
Maybe the mayor blew up the microphone.
Mhm.
Maybe a wire disconnected.
Naomi, can you hear now?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Cavalier, were you tabling your motion?
Mayor, at this time, I'll table the motion. Thank you.
And with that, I don't have my agenda up, but I believe we're on to the city manager search update. Is Linnell on the call with us? Turn over to acting city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We're currently at the end of the phase 2 of the city manager search. The application period got extended to May 20th. And Linnell over at Colin Bain, Ziegler and Associates will give us an update. So I'll hand the floor over to Linnell. Thank you.
First, I do apologize. We had originally talked about May 20th, but we didn't feel like that was long enough. So we actually, when we extended it on our website, we did it until the 25th. And I must not have relayed that to you. So first, my apologies. I just want to say we had, in the first round of recruiting, we had some really good candidates. We just didn't feel like we had enough of them. Since we reopened it, we've had 6 more applications. We have some strong candidates in the mix, and we have some more that potentially could be a good fit. We're still looking into them. So at this point, we feel like we're in a good place. For some reason, we've noticed that people tend to apply the last day. And so tomorrow is technically the last day of the extension, and we'll see what comes in tomorrow. But I plan on Thursday on giving each of you council members a call. Phone call with an update. Martin and Noemi gave me your phone numbers today, so I'm able to do that. And I'll give you a call on Thursday to tell you where we stand and kind of give you an overview. And that'll also give you a chance to ask me questions as well if you have any, after the meeting ends tonight. So, but I do think we're in a good place where we've continued our networking and our marketing. And like I said, we've had 6 more applications, and we've had some good ones since then. So in addition to the good candidates that we already had. So we'd still probably like 1 or 2 more, but we're in a good place.
Thank you, Linnell. Any questions? I'm sorry, who is that? John? Who is asking the question? I hear someone say they had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Starting to hear voices. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll look forward to hearing from you on Thursday.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That brings us to the consent agenda this evening. Item G, approval of checks number 64715 through 64782 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $498,592.39. Audit committee was Councilmember Bond and the Mayor Pro Tem. Any exceptions?
No exception.
And item H, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $282,571.21. Any exceptions?
No exceptions.
Payroll's too low, but it's no exceptions.
Finally, item I, City Council meeting minutes of May 10th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Consent agenda is approved. Okay, on to reports. I've got a number of things tonight. First, we had our monthly city chat last month, and I'm proud to report we had a 300% increase in attendance. We had 3 people. But it was a good discussion. Just to summarize some of what was discussed, there were several issues brought to our attention. An issue with some potential illegal parking going on by the new crosswalk at Jackson. Concern about the pavement condition on Trillium near Heatherwood. And also an issue with a potential oil sheen on Trillium by Heatherwood that I've alerted the city manager to and they're looking into. And then some of the questions that they had that were partly addressed by the city manager in his report tonight were the pavement preservation plan, code enforcement, and the status of the design and construction for Silvercrest Park. So those were what I had. Mayor Pro Tem may have a few more that she can highlight in her report. Second, Mayor Pro Tem and I attended the Snohomish County Cities dinner last Thursday. It was a very well-attended event. I'd say there's 30 or 40 people. It's the first time we've had the event in 2 years. It's good to see people, good to talk. We had a presentation. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he's with the AWC who gave a presentation on ARPA funds. And as part of we ended the evening by at our tables, just kind of doing a little round table talk. People, various jurisdictions are using their ARPA funds. I'd summarize it in 2 ways. Everyone is moving slowly, and there seems to be a focus on infrastructure. There were other uses that cities are making, but those are the 2 things that stood out to me from the conversation. I'll get to the last thing last. The third thing is Highway 2. I travel over Highway 2 several times a month. As people are well aware, there's often challenges on the weekends getting across. The city of Sultan, that Councilmember Bond now works in, is in the midst of doing a study or a survey with residents. I've filled it out. I'd encourage our staff to get that up on the website because I'm sure there's other residents of Mill Creek that travel the Highway 2 corridor. It's not limited to Sultan residents. It's trying to get input by all the users of the corridor so that they can help evaluate the various alternatives that they're considering for how to deal with that congestion that happens on usually Fridays and the end of weekends and long weekends. So I'll pass that website or the link on to the city manager so that they can possibly get that posted. We had our monthly mayor's meeting yesterday, where I think there's 9 or 10 of us. And one of the interesting things out of that to me was I didn't realize how most of the cities in the county have strong mayors. It just dawned on me that there's only, I think it's Bothell, Mill Creek, Mount Lake Terrace, Granite Falls, and I think there's one other. All the other cities have strong elected mayors. So I circulated earlier, I mentioned this a couple months ago. The discussion started at the mayor's meeting about writing some kind of op-ed piece, kind of a call to action on all jurisdictions and at all levels of government in light of the rising crime rates and the rising drug usage that we're all encountering in our jurisdictions. That led to a op-ed that I circulated that the strong mayors presented to us yesterday that they would like to submit, and they would like the mayors or us weak mayors to sign on as well. But as you know, I'm not willing to sign on to something unless I've vetted it with all of you first. So I circulated it's just over a page op-ed that I think Councilmember Gailey and Lake Stevens, former police officer in Everett, took a lead in crafting. But they have asked if I would be willing to sign on to the letter. And I bring it to you for discussion, consensus, comments, thoughts, objections.
I support you signing, Mayor. I think the letter is spot on. And I mean, as long as we're having this conversation, crime is rising. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. I mean, what do we think would happen when we defunded our police, cash bail reform, soft on crime, catch and release, all the above, all the catchphrases that we hear all day long, to leave the rest of the lay public as victims? I think this letter is appropriate. And let's remember, this council passed a resolution 7-0 asking our legislators to go back to Olympia and fix the 4 bills that were the catalyst for this crime wave. I urge voters to remember that when they head to the polls this November. Thank you.
Councilmember Steckler, did you have a question or comment?
I do have a comment. And first of all, I want to thank you for asking for our opinions on this. And I recently, 2 weeks ago, I sat in on a meeting with the Seattle City Attorney about the same subject, about the drug laws and the enforcement of the drug laws. And she really opened my eyes as to, pardon me, as this whole area of letting people go with that are caught with a drug possession, not drug use, but drug possession, and the 3-time rule. And one of the challenges that she cited, and one of the biggest challenges that all of the major cities across the country are facing, and even smaller cities, is the amount of congestion in the courts because of the amount of drug cases facing the courts. And there's so much congestion that cases are not going in front of the courts for years. So police are arresting people. And then it's taking upwards of 2 years before their cases are going to court. And so what a lot of cities are doing is there's a huge release of small case crimes that are just being forgiven. And because they want to get to, instead of trying to prosecute the person that has a piece of drug use on them, they want to go after the people that are selling drugs, that are trafficking the drugs, because prosecuting the ones that have drugs on them are not stopping the drug case as much as getting the ones that are running the drugs, that are selling the drugs, that are prosecuting the drugs. And that's what the attorneys, the prosecutors are trying to get to across the country. And so what they're trying to do is by keeping what they don't want to do is have laws where police are catching people with drugs on them. Police are arresting these individuals. They're taking them and they're putting them running them through the process, and then their cases are never coming to court. They're never being prosecuted, and that's causing a lot of frustration with law enforcement. So that's why these cases of not prosecuting people in small possession are being passed by many of these cities, because they want to get to the individuals that are really perpetuating the drug trafficking, the drug use. And they when it takes up to 2 years to get to some of them, in many cases they're being let go for time served, and it's they could be convicted for much longer term and incarcerated into federal prison. So I'm not offering a John Steckler opinion or council member opinion, but I thought it would be interesting to just really enlightened me when I heard all of this. And I just thought I would pass it on when I saw your letter and the veracity of this document that says that because we're not prosecuting these individuals for possession, it's leading to increased drug trafficking, when in fact I listened to the city attorney saying the only way to reduce drug trafficking is to go after the traffickers, the sales, the people that are selling drugs, not the people that have a small amount of drug possession on them. Doesn't account for when they arrest people that are actually involved in drug usage, but drug possession. That's what they're trying to get away from. And by not arresting them and not convicting them, they're not abusing the police officers that are arresting and then watching their arrests be just released into the public. I just wanted to share that information that I was given, and as consideration on this letter. I think it's a little ferocious on that one paragraph about drug possession.
Councilmember Cavalieri.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be really quick. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of adults 18 to 45. Find that amazing what the non-arrest policy and this number have in common. You can literally put your finger on a map and connect them together. When we passed the drug bill here in the city, the ordinance to give our officers the ability to arrest on drug crimes, that is the tip of the spear. That's the intervention moment. People aren't sitting behind bars for years for a simple possession. That just doesn't happen. I'm sorry. I think you were given a bit of misinformation or some political speech, but the drug dealers are the cartels that are spilling over the border. Now, we all know what's happening here. So Olympia could fix it. Olympia could take the, for lack of a better term, the boot off the neck of law enforcement and allow them to do their job. Prosecutors could prosecute and the jail could hold them. The jail's at 1/3 capacity across the state now. Not because of there's not a lot of people to arrest, because now it's you can commit 3 crimes of possessing fentanyl, which all it takes is a matchstick to kill somebody. And you still get to go free. So that's the problem. That's what's killing people. That's what's causing crime. It's nothing shocking about it. It's very simple. Permissiveness. Permissiveness is run amok. Thank you.
Councilmember Bond.
Thank you. The premise is better to arrest the drug dealer, not the user, which makes sense. Nothing wrong with that. But the way we used to do it was we held users accountable for illegal drugs and possession, and then they got a reduced sentence by helping us catch the people that sold it to them. Well, we've said we're not going to do that anymore. You're a victim. You're not a criminal. You're a victim. You're a victim of addiction, and society has failed you. So we're not going to hold you accountable. And we got the message out, which increased demand. More people are using, not less, because the consequences have been reduced, which makes it more profitable for the dealers. And it takes away the ability to work your way up to dealers. Drug cops used to catch the street level user and work their way up. The other thing is when you find somebody with what might be misdemeanor possession and you make an arrest and then you do a search and you get warrants, you find out, this isn't just recreational user. He's got a trunk full of pills. And you start putting together another case. But we've taken that away too. Now it's got to be documented that you offered them services and they refused them. And the well-intended path we are on is broken and feeding into this problem. And more people are going to die until we start changing the approach to something better. I don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you. So I think I've got the direction I need for that letter. The last item I wanted to report on was I brought to you 2 weeks ago another letter that Nate Narian had asked for the city to support for me to sign. It was in support of the apprenticeship program. So I wanted to make sure there was no objection to me signing on to that letter as mayor as well. I see John putting his thumb up.
I just had a quick question too.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. In Councilmember Naring's, in his letter or his proposal, it also mentioned that funding was necessary. So what is the city on the hook for as far as funding goes would be my question.
I don't believe it was I don't recall putting us on the hook for anything. There's a letter of support for developing the program. Is how I recall, but I will double check to make sure there's nothing in that letter that puts us on the hook before I would sign it. Any other questions, comments, concerns, objections? Not seeing any. Okay. The very last item I had, I'll report more fully in a couple of weeks, but at SCT tomorrow night, the main item is the dues for the coming, not just year, but for the next 5 years. There's some adjustments coming our way. Not significant. It's to the tune of about 12 or $1,000 or $1,200 a month. I'm sorry, a year. Raising our dues from about 43 to 5,300, but I'll report on that more fully next time. And with that, that's what I had. Mayor Pro Tem, any report this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. I Well, also like you, I was at the city chat. I think you covered pretty much everything that was brought up. I would say that you missed, I think there were a few things brought up about some code enforcement concerns in that conversation that we had. And also I had written down some things about some North Shore Senior Center activities, and there was some discussions regarding senior center activities. Also, like the mayor said, I was also at the SCC meeting. It was a great meeting. It was great to get to see other mayors and council members. We had great discussion around the ARPA funds. AWC gave us the great presentation, and like the mayor said, we it seems everyone is taking it slow. That seemed to be the really common theme. Everybody's taking their time and making sure they're doing this right and using their funds properly. And infrastructure seemed to be a big topic, and parks and things like that were at the top of mind for people, and stormwater, things like that were on their minds. So it was a really good discussion to see what everybody else was doing. Also, I just want to let everybody know that the economic recovery for Snohomish County is actually having their District 4 meeting tomorrow night, and it is in Mount Lake Terrace from 6 to 7:30. This is where you can go. You can bring up anything, any concerns you have, any impacts you've had during COVID. You know, this is how they're deciding, taking information to decide how to spend their funds that they've received at a county level. They are having activities for kids and a food truck. So, and it's free to encourage you to bring your kids. So somebody's gonna be able to do arts and crafts with your kids while you're participating in this meeting. So I highly encourage everyone in Mill Creek who's interested to go out and participate in this. Also, we have the mayor, and I'm the alternate, so has the HEART meeting on June 2nd. So I'm sure we'll be reporting back about that as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Bond, any report tonight?
The discussion about the tents and whatnot creates sort of a bigger discussion. Having dabbled with code enforcement issues, it would be a good idea to put this on an agenda down the road as to what we do. If I hit a deer and it dies in the road, Public Works picks it up. If I land that deer in your front yard and keep going, it's your responsibility to clean it up. Or you got to drag it out in the street and hope the neighbor's ring camera doesn't pick you up. Same with throwing a chair on the side of the road versus a chair in your backyard. So what is the obligation? We don't want to set a precedent where we go in and clean up private property for people that maybe should be cleaning their own property. But if they're a legit victim of somebody else's crime, I'm not sure we want to go and fine them for not cleaning it up either. So it's kind of a challenging spot, and maybe we should talk about it a little more. Proud dad moment. I'm getting on a plane in about 8 hours to fly to Annapolis to celebrate my son's graduation from the United States Naval Academy. Jordan Keith Bond is going to be an officer in the United States Navy. He's going to be a pilot. He's going to Pensacola later this year to learn how to fly. He wants to fly jets, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through before he knows what platform he'll get to be trained in. But thanks for tolerating a proud dad moment.
Congratulations. Councilmember Steckler, any report tonight?
No report.
Councilmember Cavalieri.
Thanks, Mayor. Congratulations to your son, Councilmember Bond. It's always on the tail of some bad news. It's always good to hear good news. As we were conducting our meeting here this evening, the 19th child died in Texas on the operating table from the massive shooting down there in the school. 2 adults as well, so 21 total, several still being worked on as we speak. And before everybody starts trying to decide if it was his skin color that did it, or the God he prayed to, or the anger he had at the world, let's just remember it was simple hatred. And right now, these people need our love and our prayers. It's just a sad day. Thank you.
Councilmember Allison, any report tonight?
No report this evening.
Councilmember Duque.
I too wanted to just take a moment to address, I'm just heartbroken about what's happened at that elementary school. And I wanted to share that the Everett School District sent out an email to the parents of our community with resources about how to talk about these types of tragedies with your children. And so I think it's one of those things that's helpful to, if you're not sure, or, to look for those resources. So just flagging for everyone. I don't know if there's anything the city can do. I don't, in terms of any next steps. I mean, that's one of these things with what's happening in the world, that these things splash on our newspaper front pages and then slowly kind of disappear. But I just wanted to take this as a reminder, if you need any resources on how to deal with this as a parent or talking with your child as a community, that there is some information out there that might be helpful, and it might be something we might want to share or post about on our social media. I don't know, but I just wanted to take that moment to flag to not forget to take care of your own health as you read about the news that's going on.
Thank you. Acting City Manager, your reports tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. The first report is a staffing hiring update. Proud to announce that we hired a seasonal worker, Mike Ryan, thanks to Matthew Combs, our Public Works Supervisor, for moving fast on that and getting Mike to join the team for the season. So, second is a COVID-19 health update. I see that the COVID case rates are actually turning a bit. So we're still monitoring the situation. Masks still stay on across the city. For our customers who come into our passport services as well. Haven't had any issues with that. Things are working pretty smoothly. So status quo for now, but we are looking on a weekly basis. North Shore Senior Center, discussion that came up, I think in the last council meeting or the past recent ones. We provided Councilmember Steckler with some contact info from the city. So the senior center does have some contacts from an administrative standpoint for billing, as well as what I did find after talking to the CEO over at the center is that a lot of the residents or members would like to be more involved with the city. We're going to explore possibly somehow maybe how they can maybe help out with certain types of events or something in a way that maybe we can somehow collaborate with them. Could maybe align them with us so that we can maybe have them help with certain things that go on across the city throughout the year. So we'll work on that. Haven't gone any further on that other than giving them contact information. And the last report was on encampments. I think we talked enough about the encampments and kind of how our city's going to move forward. I think the first step in doing that, moving forward, is probably putting together a form letter. Public Works and Police will start working on that and reaching out to our residents to get some conversations going so we can address that situation. And
City Manager, I'm sorry to interrupt. So did we ever find out who our liaison or director is now at the senior center?
I'm contacting Nathan, can't remember his last name, the CEO there. Marking is actually in contact with, I think, a few other contacts, like the creative works director or something over there. And so we do have some contact information if that's what you're asking.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
And with that, I'll hand it over to our acting police chief, White, on the hiring update. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor, Pro Tem Council. I'm here to give you a small report on hiring and the update for the police department. I'm happy to announce that today we actually had 2 laterals in for oral boards. They did very well. We'll be moving forward. They are scheduled for polygraph examinations next week, and we'll be moving right into background investigations depending on the outcome there. We also this Friday have scheduled 12 entry-level candidates.
Are they in-county laterals? Just curious. Not, I don't need the agency, just curious if they're in-county.
No, council member, they're not. Close. They're both Washington. So we do have 12 entry-level oral boards scheduled for Friday. That's the biggest group that we've handled in a day here. As far as entry-level candidates are concerned, that's going to be a full day of oral boards. We actually have we have 7 scheduled polygraphs next week. We're going to take the best candidates from that oral board with the entry levels and fill those spots for those polygraph examinations and move those on to background investigations as quickly as possible. The addition of the consultant, and I have to really commend Sergeant Rod Fleming on his recommendation to look for a consultant that will help us with recruiting. In today's world, we're trying to be as accommodating as possible to anyone who has an interest in applying for the Mill Creek Police Department. We're walking them through the process, making sure that they're hitting dates, to have things documented, to have their paperwork turned in, communicating with them constantly to make sure that they are understood, that they're appreciated, they're applying with the city of Mill Creek. Our consultant from LE3 Consulting has done an excellent job organizing all these things. This has been a lot of work for him, and I appreciate his efforts to organize these things, to look at our systems, to see if we can expedite these processes in any way. The new HR manager, Debbie, has been great with helping us facilitate and expedite this system. So everything's just coming together perfectly at this time. We're putting more and more resources into recruiting efforts, and ideas are coming in from the officers as well. So I think that we are well on track to fulfilling our goal of getting this department up to staff by the end of 2022. That being said, as you can tell from the city manager's presentation tonight, we're going to be looking at staffing as we go forward into 23 and 24 as well. So I do have to bring forward some bad news. We did receive a resignation from an officer yesterday. So our vacancies of 7 now becomes 8. And it is my understanding that we also have some other things that might be happening next year with some retirements. So we're going to do our best to be proactive and look at filling those positions as well as soon as possible. So at least having people in line to step up and fill the gaps. With that, I'll take questions.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cavallari.
Just a quick comment. Acting chief, acting city manager, finance, HR, guys have done a fantastic job in a very short amount of time. I'm proud of all of you, and it's really starting to pay off. So thank you for really, doing your due diligence and putting bodies, where they need to be and getting them on board. That is the biggest recruiting class I have ever heard in the city of Mill Creek. So maybe we can do something fun about that too, hopefully. And then a quick question. We talked about the drug ordinance and whatnot tonight. So has the city officers, maybe even yourself included, have you utilized the ordinance that the city passed last year to be able to make arrests, to be able to conduct searches, whatnot?
I would have to research that, council member, to get back to you if we've used the ordinance itself. The Blake decision has did hamper us for quite some time. And I think that the letter is very timely. So I appreciate the mayor bringing it to the attention of council. I also would echo the comments of Councilmember Bond. That's, in my experience as a police officer, that's how we would operate. We would be contacting these individuals with personal use amounts of narcotics and work our way up. Those small amounts lead to bigger amounts, lead to other contraband. They are the things that those are the people that we're coming in contact with most. That's the demographic we're working with most. The people that are the dealers, the people that are higher level dealers as well, are not as readily available to the street officers, the patrol officers interdiction. So that's how we, as Mill Creek police officers, who the majority of our officers are working patrol, would handle and address any issue that we had here in Mill Creek.
Maybe I didn't say it right. I was asking if I understand the Blake decision. I'm talking about the ordinance that the city passed. Are you utilizing that to make the arrest on a gross misdemeanor charge rather than the three whacks at the apple is what I was asking.
Yeah. And like I said, I would have to research that to
Okay,
see if
all right.
we've actually utilized the ordinance very often.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Floor is still yours, Acting City Manager. Are we on to events?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, now the Chief of Police is done. We'll pass it over to Scott Harder, Marketing and Communications.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Naomi, can you bring up our slide deck? We were supposed to get those in your packets, but they didn't get here. So we'll go through it. You don't have to read through it right now, but I'm going to talk about a couple wins and some plan for an upcoming event. So first slide. The Pickleball Project. This was a last minute update to this slide deck. You can go ahead and next slide, please. I'm going to talk back. I think it was January 8th. I got a phone call from Chuck Wright, a few emails, and everything ensued from there. And this has finally come to a close, at least phase one. So I am happy to announce that we have our pickleball courts are now striped for pickleball. So, but it took a lot of work. I thought it was going to be this nice, quick, easy win, but it certainly was not. But we did everything we were supposed to do. It was great to see how the process worked and, researched all the vendors and there's availability and supply chain. We did partner with the USA Pickleball Association, local advocates to get the best practices. Selected a great vendor that hot water pressure washed our courts. Unfortunately, after that happened was the pollen storm of the season, which was ridiculous, and we had to have it done again. Matthew Combs and his crew installed new nets. And then, of course, as you see here, they're striped for pickleball, just like we had planned before. Heron Park is striped for one court. So if you're a family and you have two paddles and a ball, you can go play utilizing that net. Highlands Park is striped for two. So there's two courts there. And this is for the avid players, which are plenty here in the city, that have their own nets, their own supplies. They can go there and play, and we'll be able to teach our city classes and clinics for that court. So as you can see on the right, pickleball is 36 inches on the sides, 34 inches high in the middle. Tennis is 42 on the outside and 36 in the middle. So if you're just playing recreational, it works great. Next slide. This is Heron Park on January 26th. It was in some pretty tattered shape. So the next slide will show what it looks as of Monday. So you can see in the top left, there's that line he sent to me, the vendor that shows what it looked like between pressure washing and not pressure wash. So the new aerial photo shows the one blue striped court there. Then the next slide will show Highlands. That's what that looked like. You can barely see what was striped many years ago. It was in orange. I can't even see it from here, but next slide will show what it looks like now with local resident playing pickleball there. So as you can see how that north-south orientation worked. When I visited Heron Park this weekend, I ran into some residents and they were just elated that this was completed and super happy that we have a place for two courts. Next slide. So next steps, we're going to make some announcements on social website. We'll be putting out the city surveys in each of these parks. Hopefully do some sort of ribbon cutting city council game like we talked about, or celebration with council, Senator Lovick, and some of the local pickleball advocates and residents. We've already reached out to some local instructors and found many that are already interested in helping teaching these classes starting as soon as late June or early July. And since it didn't get into the recreation program, we'll just add it into the digital on the website and then do some promotion on our end. And from what we've seen in the surrounding area, Marysville to Montlake Terrace, Monroe, these pickleball programs are sold out through August in each of the cities. So we're pretty excited to see what that looks like. And then next, we're going to research some equipment purchase for classes and hopefully some loaners for some residents if they want to come down and utilize Highlands. Next slide. Okay, any questions on pickleball? Nope, cool.
I have a question, Scott.
Yes.
Are we looking at doing classes for just adults or for the kids too?
So that's something we talked with Skyhawks about. It's something that they're hoping to do later on this summer. But we don't have that. We need to research more to find some kids instructors, because the ones that we've talked to so far, they just basically do beginners and intermediate, but it's a good idea.
Okay, yeah, great. Because I know my daughter is learning a little bit of pickleball at school in PE, and she's really excited about it and keeps talking about it. And so she's taking tennis this summer because it's similar to pickleball, and she would love to have pickleball. I'm sure she's not the only 8-year-old in the city that would love to have pickleball lessons. So just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, good thing about pickleball is there's no stray balls really, because they have holes in them and they're very, very heavy. So Memorial Day, the celebration is going to be on Monday, May 30th. So it's been 3 years since we've done this. The last 2 have been virtual recorded, but it will take place at Library Park at 9 a.m. Next slide. We've got our master of ceremonies will be Police Chaplain Nick Lewis. Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Vignal will be speaking, and State Senator John Lovick will also be making some remarks. We also have some remarks coming from Senator Patty Murray's office as well, featuring the Mill Creek Police Color Guard, who we've worked with very closely on this ceremony to kind of bring it back to what the standard is for this type of ceremony. We've got George Moffitt as a bugler, the Mill Creek Corral, the Citizens Patrol, and not just Girl Scout Troop 41612. We've got quite a few, as well as the Boy Scouts going to help us out. Next slide. Any questions on Memorial Day? All right. In your hands is the city highlights. So this is the quarterly print that we do. So twice a year, it's been the recreation guide, and twice a year, it's the city highlights kind of informational piece. So we had a lot more time this year. We worked a lot more trying to get this put together. We did hire a contractor this time to do this design work. They did a phenomenal job, I think. We highlighted excerpts from the State of the City video. There are 11 QR codes in here. So it's not just ease of use for people that get it, that want to see it, but it's for tracking purposes too. We want to see if this works. We want to see what people are interested in. We've got on that front page, the city survey, trying to collect information from folks about, I can't remember how many, I think there's 15 questions just about just the city in general, try and collect some information. But so this reaches 18,000 households with an additional 2,000 copies. So it's a pretty large circulation, and it really hits the residents and gets it out when you think outside of Facebook or anything like that. So we've got Martin's introduction on the first page. The next slide will show, oh yeah, QR codes there used for print and tracking. Next slide. And that's how we track our QR codes there. And we'll probably come up with a report in the upcoming council meetings to show what that looks like. Next slide. Here's the second page. So there's more highlights of the state of the city. Mayor and Pro Tem talked a lot about DRCC and the sub-area plan. So we have specific QR codes just for that to see what people are interested in. We really want to, we're really trying to elevate how we communicate and do some outreach and education on these. Next page will show Next slide. Keep going. Last slide is just some communication, some pickleball stuff, a more push on the survey, more events, something that we did differently this year. On the right, you can see there's a listing of all the city events. We split it up, city events from community events, because it's something we've noticed a lot. Everybody thinks the city hosts the garage sale, run of the mill, everything else like that. So just trying to educate people in the city on what we host and what other people host. And speaking of, I just heard, yeah, run of the mill was announced. They just opened up registration today. Down on the bottom right is the Parks and Recreation. We worked diligently on the board to create a 5 or 6 question survey also to see what people want to see most in the parks for this coming summer. And then a quick little thing there about geocaching, which has still become very popular. Next slide. Yeah, keep going, Naomi. 5 question, yeah. We've got our public works update here on the left. I think this is awesome because it really highlights all the work that Mike Todd's group did, and all the contractors put together those safety corridors by Jackson and Freedom Field. So that's pretty cool. Nice little reminder for people to get permits, work with their HOAs. Got our staff update there with those great photos. And on the right, we've got a police update highlighting 2 of the videos that we did for recruitment. And last slide's going to highlight City Council and all our different avenues of communication. And that's that.
Questions, comments? Yeah, it looks fantastic. I wish Jody was here to get the compliments as well. You guys did a great job.
Thanks.
Councilmember Duque?
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. I went through the PowerPoint when I was on my flight back today, and I loved all the opening. It was really great. You mentioned really quickly on the city events page, community events, so you got a lot of questions about the garage sale. That's not listed here as one of the community events. You have Mill Creek Festival, Run of the Mill, and Run with the Heart.
It already happened.
No, but the October one?
That'll go in the fall.
Okay, because you have it October 1st, Run with Heart 5K, and then the garage sale would also, isn't it the first Saturday of the month? That's just for consistency. If you also don't need to add it. I agree with you. It's a fall thing, but that was listed there, and this all looks just fantastic. I had another comment and I can't remember. I'll email you, but yeah, looks great. Thank you.
So click those QR codes when you're looking at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great job again. Is that it for your reports, Acting City Manager?
That's all the reports from the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Not much to report tonight, huh? A lot covered tonight. It's been very helpful and informative. Okay, before we close out, that brings us to audience communication. Would anyone like to address the council before we adjourn? No one. Barb, you're quick to the draw as usual. Name and address in 3 minutes.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place Southeast Mill Creek. As a resident of Mill Creek, I wish to add my thanks and total appreciation of the acting city manager's presentation. It was very thorough and informative. Great job to everyone who worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Anyone else like to address the council? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:18 and reconvene 2 weeks from this evening. See you in a couple weeks.
Have a good week, everybody.